I spent my entire life, 12 years, turning my family's dream into reality. From a small, unnoticed shop, I built it into a $55 million empire. But do you know what the most painful part is? My own family destroyed it all. That day, I thought everything was on track. But when my sister stood before me, her gaze cold, and said just one word, worthless, my world collapsed. A simple word, but it carried the weight of betrayal, forcing me to face questions I'd never dared ask. Was my sacrifice worth it? And did my family truly understand me, or were they just using me? If you've ever trusted someone so deeply that you gave up everything for them, only to find out they were the ones who pushed you off the edge, keep listening to my story. What happens next will change the way you see everything: success, family, and yourself. The story begins. Hello, I'm Clara Miller, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes family can become your worst enemy, especially in business. For 12 years, I poured all my energy and strength into our family's small company, transforming it from a struggling startup into a $55 million business. But sometimes, success breeds envy, even from those who should be celebrating your victories. I still remember the day everything began, when our family business was just a small computer repair shop in a shopping center. My father had started it 23 years ago, and it was his pride, though it barely earned enough to support our family. My younger sister, Jessica, was always the favorite, the brilliant one, the A student who got into a prestigious business school. As for me, the quiet one, I stayed behind to help Dad while pursuing my computer science degree at a local college. Clara, you're wasting your talent here, Jessica would often say whenever she came home from school. You should be aiming higher. But I saw something in our little shop that others didn't: potential. While Jessica learned about business models in theory, I was learning about programming in practice, finding gaps in the market. By the end of my senior year, I developed the company's first software, a simple yet effective tool that helped small businesses manage their inventory. It wasn't revolutionary, but it was easy to use and affordable. My father had his doubts at first, but when local businesses began buying the software, his attitude changed. "You must be onto something, daughter," he said, finally showing a hint of pride in my work. Those words meant so much to me at the time, though little did I know, they were as fragile as morning dew. The company's revenue began to grow steadily under my leadership. I worked 15-hour days, 7 days a week, while Jessica climbed the corporate ladder at a prestigious consulting firm in Chicago. I was building something real. Our small repair shop had evolved into a software company, and our clientele had shifted from local businesses to national corporations. Emily, my confidant, always looked at me with quiet concern. "Don't burn yourself out, Clara," she would say, bringing dinner to the office. "You need to have a life outside of work." I smiled faintly, setting the laptop aside and looking at her. "Thanks for dinner, but you know this job is everything to me right now." I pushed the pile of papers aside, trying to sit up straight, but the exhaustion I couldn't hide was apparent. Emily sat down next to me, placing the tray of food on the table and looking at me intently. "Clara, you always do everything on your own. But sometimes I feel like you don't realize you're doing too much. You've built an empire, but no one can stand alone forever. You can share the burden with me." I looked at her, my heart heavy. "You're right. But if I don't do it, who will?" My voice turned bitter, as if I had been bearing the weight for too long, and no one could understand. But I was driven by a vision, and perhaps, deep down, a desire to prove myself to my family. After 7 years of transformation, we hit our first $1 million revenue. That's when Jessica suddenly seemed interested in the family business. She left her job in Chicago and moved back home. "I think it's time I take the rightful position in the company," she declared at a family dinner. "With my business expertise, we can take things to the next level." She sat across from me, her eyes sparkling with grand plans that I knew wouldn't be as simple as she imagined. Still, I couldn't help but feel a bit of surprise. Jessica, my sister, who had always had her own career and barely cared about the family business, now wanted to dive into it as if she had been preparing for this moment all along. My father smiled, his gaze filled with pride. "That's wonderful, princess. We need your professional touch here." He seemed so pleased to see his daughter return to the company, a joy I couldn't help but feel jealous of. Jessica reached out, gently touching my father's hand, showing gratitude and a desire to contribute. I sat there, my fork suspended in the air, trying to digest what was happening. The company I had built from almost nothing was now being handed to my sister as if it were a gift. But I swallowed my objections and tried to be a team player. "I'll do everything better, don't worry," Jessica said, as if I were concerned about her capabilities. But I couldn't forget the time she had rejected, the time she showed no interest in the family business. This change seemed too abrupt, and I couldn't tell if it was genuine concern or a calculated move. Then, Jessica was appointed as the co-CEO alongside me, despite her lack of experience in the industry. My father said it would be good for the company's image to have someone with her credentials at the helm. I focused on product development and operations, while she took charge of marketing and investor relations. The next 6 years became a series of differences. While I continued to develop new software solutions and maintain customer relationships, Jessica focused on crafting a glamorous image for herself as the face of the company. She gave interviews about being a woman in tech, accepted awards for entrepreneurship, all while taking credit for innovations that my team had created. The company's revenue continued to grow, reaching $55 million annually, but the tension between us also escalated. Jessica began excluding me from important meetings, making decisions without consulting me, and gradually pushing me out of the company I had built. Then came Dad's 65th birthday party, the day everything changed. The party was, of course, Jessica's idea. She rented the grandest ballroom in the city's most expensive hotel and invited all of our business partners. It was more than just a birthday party, it was a networking event. But that was Jessica's style. Everything had to have a purpose. I arrived early to help prepare, wearing a simple black dress, which Jessica immediately criticized. "Can't you try a little harder?" she snapped. "Tonight is for important people." I ignored her criticism and focused on welcoming guests as they arrived. The room quickly filled with business partners, customers, and family friends. Jessica moved through the crowd like a politician, while I quietly stood behind, making sure everything ran smoothly. At the party, Jessica tapped her glass and stood to speak. I expected the usual remarks, perhaps a heartfelt speech about Dad, maybe a few childhood memories of us. But instead, she dropped a bombshell that would shatter my family forever. "We're here to celebrate Dad's 65th birthday," she began, her voice resonating through the hushed room. "I think it's time to announce some changes at Miller Technologies. The board has agreed that the company needs unified leadership to move forward." My heart stopped. The board meeting? Which board? "We've been held back too long by outdated thinking and resistance to change," Jessica continued, her eyes locking onto mine. "So, effective immediately, I will be assuming the role of the sole CEO of the company. It's time for those who no longer serve the company's growth to step aside." The room erupted into murmurs. I sat frozen, as Jessica continued to undermine me under the guise of announcing a major decision. She wasn't just announcing a business decision, it was a personal attack, pushing me out of the company I had built over 12 years. "There are people," she said, her voice sweet and fake, "better suited for technical roles than leadership. My sister Clara has done a good job maintaining the old systems, but to compete in today's market, we need vision, we need excellence, and frankly, Clara, you're not capable of running a company of this scale." Her words were a slap to my face. I looked into Jessica's eyes, the same eyes that once held empathy, now cold and calculating. She spoke as if I had done nothing of value for this company, as if my contributions meant nothing. I looked to Dad, hoping he would stand up for me, but instead he nodded along with each of Jessica's words, smiling with pride. Mom looked down at her plate, her hands trembling, too afraid to meet my gaze. "In fact," Jessica continued, her voice rising, "Clara, you have no place in today's business world. Your outdated ideas and lack of business acumen have become a burden. It's time for you to step down with some dignity." Every word Jessica spoke struck my mind like a hammer. I wanted to stand up and protest, but my throat tightened. I couldn't comprehend how everything had changed so quickly. The company I had built, into which I had poured my sweat and tears, was now being treated like a discarded object. Jessica had calculated everything meticulously, not just in business, but in how she maneuvered within the family. And I was the one left behind, unprepared for what was coming. The room fell silent. Hundreds of eyes were on me, waiting for my response. I felt their pity, their ridicule, their judgment. Everything I had built, every sacrifice I had made, was now being stripped away in front of everyone. After her words and the gazes of the people around me, I stood slowly, the sound of the chair scraping across the floor echoing in the ballroom like a gunshot. Everyone expected a scene, perhaps tears, perhaps an argument. But instead, I simply grabbed my purse, walked over to my father's table, and placed a small gift package in front of him. "Happy birthday, Dad," I said softly, before leaving the ballroom, holding my head high, leaving the whispers and curious stares behind. That night, sitting in my home office, surrounded by the awards and patents bearing my name, I made a decision. Jessica thought she had won, but she had overlooked one crucial detail, a detail that would turn her victory into the greatest mistake of her life. As I opened my laptop and began typing each word that appeared on the screen, it felt like solid steps toward a clear goal. Every line I wrote was a part of the plan I had kept hidden, one that would now become the tool to reclaim everything I had lost. I not only had the ability to maintain the systems, but also the vision to rebuild from the wreckage. Jessica might think I lacked leadership ability, but she was inadvertently helping me create the greatest opportunity of my life. A faint smile played on my lips. Tomorrow would be interesting. I sent the final emails. Everything would change. In the end, there are many ways to run a successful company, and I had learned more in over 10 years than Jessica had learned in all her luxurious business courses. The next morning, as dawn broke, I arrived at the office early, before anyone else, and waited until exactly 10 a.m. Jessica walked through the front door with Dad beside her, both wearing victorious smiles, but I knew that in just a few seconds, those smiles would vanish from their faces. "Clara!" Jessica's voice was both surprised and irritable. "What are you doing here? After what happened last night, I thought you'd have enough dignity to stay home." I smiled, recalling the email I had sent at 2 a.m. to all our partners, clients, and key employees of Miller Technologies. "Just handling a few things, sweetheart. But since you're here, maybe we should talk about the future of the company." "There's nothing to talk about," my father interrupted, his voice firm. "Jessica is the leader now. The board has approved it." "Yes, the board," I said, pulling out my tablet. "Let me talk about that. You see, while Jessica was busy organizing parties and attending interviews, I was building this company, and there are a few things you seem to have forgotten." I opened a document on the main screen of the conference room. "Let me remind you, I own 52% of Miller Technologies. When the company was founded 12 years ago, Dad gave Jessica and me 25% each, keeping 50% for himself. But 3 years ago, when we needed capital to expand, Dad sold me 27% of the shares. Do you remember that day, Dad? You were busy attending Jessica's award ceremony and signed the papers without reading them." The color drained from both their faces. Jessica clenched her fist on the conference table, her voice a whisper of disbelief. "No way," she said. "Dad wouldn't have done that." I continued to open more documents. "And not only that, the core software that generates 85% of the company's revenue doesn't belong to Miller Technologies. It belongs to my own company, Pinnacle Technologies LLC. Miller Technologies only holds a licensing agreement, which has just expired." I glanced at my watch. "About 15 minutes ago." My father collapsed into his chair, recognition dawning on his face. "The renewal documents, the ones you asked me to sign last week, the ones I didn't have time to read because I was helping Jessica plan a party?" "Exactly those," I said, "and I've decided not to submit them." Jessica turned pale, her face contorted with rage. "You're so devious." "Careful, little sister," I interrupted. "You might want to hear the rest before finishing that sentence. While you were busy announcing my supposed departure last night, I was sending emails to our clients. In fact, most of our important clients have personal loyalty clauses in their contracts with Miller Technologies. They signed because of me, because of my expertise and reputation. Last night, I notified them of the leadership change and my departure. I opened the email, pointing at the dozens of responses that had already arrived. Do you want to know how many have activated the termination clauses, or how many of our top developers, who are actually working for Pinnacle Technologies, have already accepted positions at my company? The room fell silent, and through the glass walls, we could see employees gathering, whispers spreading as they checked their emails. Jessica, who had always maintained perfect composure, was now frantically checking her phone. "You can't do this," she stammered, her voice faltering. The company you've tried to steal from me, I'll tell you right now," I interrupted. "The company you thought you could easily take just because you have an MBA and Dad's support ended the moment you humiliated me in front of everyone." I stood up, smoothing my dress. "So here's your choice. Option 1. I walk away with my shares, my software, my clients, and my employees. Miller Technologies becomes an empty shell, and you can explain to all the important people you invited last night why the company's value plummeted to zero in a single night." My father's face aged by a decade in just 15 short minutes. "So, option 2? He asked, his voice weak. "Option 2, you both resign. I take full control of Miller Technologies, and you two remain silent partners, receiving dividends but with no power in management. Jessica gets a severance package and glowing letters of recommendation for her next job, at a place far, far away." Jessica's face flushed, an interesting shade of red. "You planned all of this, didn't you? You were just waiting for the right moment to stab us in the back, weren't you?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "No, Jessica. You spent 12 years trying to be a good daughter, good sister, while the two of you took me for granted. I built this company from the ground up, while you just took credit for my work. I only started planning this," I glanced at the clock, "about 13 hours ago, when you called me useless in front of everyone we know." My phone buzzed, notifying me of client contract terminations. "Time's running out. What will you choose?" The next few minutes passed in a blur of paperwork and lawyers. By noon, I was sitting alone in the office that now belonged to me, gazing out over the city. The company I had built was truly mine now, but the victory felt hollow. The family relationships around me had crumbled, and trust lay shattered like broken glass. That night, my mother came to see me, her eyes red from crying. "It shouldn't have ended like this, should it, darling?" she asked softly. "I had no choice," I replied, my voice calm but firm. "They would have taken everything I built and cast me aside without a second thought." She nodded slowly, understanding but filled with sorrow. "So, what are you going to do now?" I showed her the plans I had prepared: expansion, new product lines, innovations I had kept hidden. "Now, I'm building something bigger, but this time, I'm doing it without carrying along those who thought I was useless." Over the next year, under my leadership, Miller Technologies' value quadrupled. Jessica found a job at a startup in Silicon Valley, more humble, though I hoped she was wiser now. My father retired, finally realizing that his golden child had almost destroyed his legacy. We met during holidays, maintaining a polite distance that masked wounds that may never heal. Sometimes, late at night, I'd look at old family photos and feel a twinge of sadness for what we had lost. But then I'd remember that night at the birthday party, the disdain in Jessica's eyes, the way my father nodded in agreement with her cruel words. In both work and family, respect must be earned, not handed out. They learned that lesson too late. As for me, I learned that sometimes, the quiet ones, the ones who are considered useless, are the ones you should watch out for, because we are the ones who know how to build something from nothing and how to reclaim it when others try to steal it away. My story spread throughout the business circles as a cautionary tale about misjudging people. These days, when I attend industry events, I often overhear whispers. "That's Clara Miller, the one they..." They never finish the sentence, but I don't need to hear it all. My success speaks for itself. Last week, I received an invitation to speak at Jessica's business school graduation ceremony. The theme was Hidden Strengths, The Power of Underestimated Leaders. I accepted with a slight smile, already planning my speech. After all, I had a long story to tell. The company continued to grow under my leadership, but more importantly, I found peace in my decisions. Sometimes, the most powerful message you can send is proving to everyone that they were wrong. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't destroying others, it's rising so high that they can't help but see their own mistakes. As I write these words from my office, looking out over the city, I remember something my mother once said: success is the best revenge, but wisdom is knowing when to stop seeking revenge and start seeking growth. She was right. I've moved beyond that need for revenge. Now, I focus solely on building something meaningful, something that will outlast petty jealousy and family tragedies. I still hold the birthday gift that I never gave to my father, a photo album chronicling the company's journey from a small repair shop to what it is today. Perhaps one day, when the wounds have healed enough, I'll give it to him. Until then, it will serve as a reminder that our greatest strength often comes from the things others underestimate. Sarah's story is a testament to the power of perseverance and the ability to stand firm in the face of adversity. What do you think about her decisions during those difficult moments? If you were in Sarah's shoes, what would you do to protect what you've built? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story may inspire and motivate those facing tough decisions. If you found this story meaningful, don't hesitate to share it with friends and loved ones. Thank you for supporting the channel. Please like, share, and subscribe to receive the latest updates. The stories are collected from various sources and do not represent any individual or organization. They are shared with the intention of spreading human values in life and have been rewritten with the support of AI. If there are any mistakes, kindly overlook them with understanding. Wishing you all the best in life.